Belgium 2024. My next guest is Mark. Mark, welcome to the show again. Mark has already been with us, one of the episodes at DevOps UK earlier this year.
France.
France, right, yeah.
Yes.
We do a lot of that.
There's so many.
Yes, and so Mark, back in France, we spoke about the history, right?
Yes.
Your history in the industry and some of the design decisions among different programming languages. We spoke about the biggest design mistakes ever.
Yeah.
But today's topic is, I think it's even more fascinating because it's even more relevant to what we are doing now. And this is how complicated everything is.
Yes. So yes, this is my new mission. I have decided I'm going to save the world from all this complexity that we've introduced into everything. Just the simple, people are building the simplest systems and making them as complicated as possible. And it's kind of like microservices or modular monoliths, and you've got event sourcing and domain-driven design, and then on the front end you've got React and Angular and all these different things. And there's nothing inherently wrong with any of those things. It's just that they're getting overused, and people are using them when they really don't need to. And
so a lot of it is just cargo cult, right?
Yes, totally.
Cargo cult is a very human and natural thing to do. We want to learn from the best, but we also have limited capacity to really understand what is going on. And by borrowing from the best, we allow ourselves to just copy-paste something that looks right.
Yeah, exactly. And the problem is that you've got like the FANG companies, Netflix and Amazon and Uber and all these sort of things. I mean, Uber kind of really spearheaded the microservices thing. And so people go, oh, Uber are doing it, so we should do it. But it's very, very unlikely that you have the same scaling problems and issues that Uber was struggling with that led them to break everything down into hundreds of microservices, possibly even thousands at Uber. And they've got 10,000 engineers, and they've got 10,000 of the best engineers in the world as well. And so they know how to do this stuff. And then you try and take what they're doing and transplant it into like a small, medium, even a larger enterprise environment where you are not going to attract, I'm trying to be very careful here. But you are not going to attract the same level of engineering talent and passion that Netflix and Google and Uber and whatever. You know, if you are really, really insanely good and very, very enthusiastic, then you can get a job at those places. If you're not, you can get a job at like a bank or a retail, you know, whatever. And then you try and take sort of microservices or modular monolith, or React is a really good example. React was created by Facebook, and so it was created for Facebook engineers to build the Facebook front end. And if they need something changing in React, they go, oh, that's fine, we'll change it. And then you take that and you give it to people who, in a lot of cases, they teach React in boot camps. And so these people have learned programming, learned React, learned HTML and CSS, maybe 6 months experience, and then they go out and start trying to build systems with it without any of the background or any of this sort of thing.
But this is also, you touch here on another problem, right? So yes, React was an internal system, internal framework in Facebook, but it was open sourced as a general purpose library or framework. And I guess Facebook did it for both like the sake of the community and for their own personal interest of doing developer relations this way,
absolutely.
Right, at the end of the day. So maybe they shouldn't have?
Yeah, I think that is something that could have been kept internal. The other example is Angular, and famously, Angular came out of Google, but for a long time they didn't use it for anything. And it was a passion project of a couple of guys who worked there, and they did it in their 20% time. And the key thing, though, is not only do you not need React, you probably don't need a SPA at all. I mean, you were talking to the chap before me about server-side rendering, and I just find it hilarious and ironic that Angular and React and Svelte and all these things, they built them to be SPAs, and so it downloads a bunch of JavaScript and creates a front end in your browser. And then because that doesn't work with search engines, and it means the time to first paint stretches out, and then these people who had invented SPAs invented server-side rendering again. And it's just, and we've already got really good, you've got PHP, you've got ASP.NET Core, you've got Java Server Pages, you've got Spring, you've got all these things that will happily render you HTML and send it to the browser. And I've been doing some kind of research on this, and it's, if I just render the HTML and send it down, how many times can I do that? How many pages can I serve you before I hit the size of the Angular runtime, for example? And you can, it's like 9, 10, 11 pages. And that's the same amount of data transfer. Most people aren't staying on your site for that long, and so you don't need it. I built a fretboard thing. I'm learning bass guitar, and I thought if I build a fretboard website, then it'll help me to understand all of that stuff. And it is entirely server-side rendered. And there's just a little bit of JavaScript, no framework, it's just JavaScript, just working with the DOM, so that when you click on a root note of a chord, it highlights the other places you should press for that chord. And that's it. And it's the sort of thing where when I started, I was kind of like, oh, I should use Svelte. That looks interesting and whatever. But it's just so much easier to build it, and Google indexes it, and it shows up in search engines and all this sort of thing.
So, so we spoke about a couple of reasons by now. First of all, it's the cargo call that we want to take example from the Ubers and the Netflix, and the other is those companies that throw out half-baked open source projects because they want to contribute to open source and look like they're doing good thing. And then the third thing is obviously just, hey, what you just said, this framework looks cool. I want to try and use it. Right, so that's another reason. Those are all very human things.
Very human things.
Both the cargo code and the willing to play with the new toys.
Yes.
And the willing to use the open source from those companies, and the willing of those companies to put them out there. Those are all very human driven by very human reasons. How do you, I mean, it's there. What can we do?
My idea, and I have yet to try this in practice, but I want to come up with, so we do all sorts of things in our project planning phases and ideation and all this sort of thing, and you do like Moscow, must, should, could, would be nice, and that sort of thing. And I think putting a kind of complexity audit in there, and so if you say we're going to use React, do the sort of the ADR, the architecture design review, where you sort of go, these are the options that we considered. And I think people need to start pushing back much harder on, we're going to do microservices, even serverless, which the whole idea of serverless was, it makes everything so simple. I've worked on serverless systems. They were way more complicated than just having a Java Server Pages or a Spring API or whatever, Spring Boot API. I think the entire team, and it should be the developers and the lead developer and the architect. There shouldn't be a sort of management decision. Management should not be saying, we're using Angular, we're doing microservices. They should be saying, we're building this, and then the developers you just need to have a step in the process just to put the brakes on those worst impulses that we have.
So there is this technique that I made a joke yesterday in my talk that if you ask why enough times, you'll be promoted to engineering manager, which is, jokes aside, this is actually what engineering manager should do.
Yeah.
They should ask why we are using that and get good, reasonable answers
Yes. Yeah.
of why we do microservices.
Yeah.
And I also think a lot of people do that.
Yes.
And they still end up with
microservices, yes.
So maybe this review board that will ask why is bound to fail because there are the same people with the same flows on the review board as well.
Yeah. So, putting my consultant hat on for a moment, I'm planning on doing a bit of free consulting next year with people and actually go in and help them kind of do this complexity audit gate thing, and I will be the person who goes in and keeps asking why. I'll be like an engineering manager for a day or for a week or something, or for your first sprint, and just go in there and when they say we're using React, just go, why are you using React? Well, because it needs to be a Spark. Why does it need to be a Spark? Well, because we need to maintain state between pages. Well, that's, why not HTMX, which just downloads little fragments of HTML and updates the DOM, and that sort of thing. I think a lot of the time people aren't even considering the options, it's kind of going, you could use this, you don't need that, explain to me why you need that, can we talk you down from here, how many endpoints does your API have? If it's less than 100, you don't do microservices. If it's more than 100, you still probably don't do microservices.
Yeah.
So and I think in the same way that we have like Scrum Masters and we have product owners and we have all these sorts of things, I think we need a person who is there to curb those worst human impulses that we have. And the other thing that I think would be really good, because the other reason I think that people do this is CV-driven development.
Oh, absolutely, for sure.
I want React on my CV.
It goes into, hey, I want to play with this new thing, both because it's interesting and because it will help me with my resume.
Yes, it will help me get hired somewhere. And I think companies and hiring managers and recruiters need to stop putting specific technologies, because if you hire me, I can get my feet under the desk and I don't care what you're using. I can be up to speed in a week, 2 max.
Absolutely.
And so can the vast majority of the people at this conference and the people watching this video. You guys can learn, if you know React, you can learn Angular. If you know Angular, Angular's a little bit more difficult, but yes, so recruiters stop insisting on specific technologies, and then developers don't feel like they have to use those things so that they can get their next interview.
Yep.
So it's a shared responsibility across the whole
shared responsibility makes it, unfortunately, very implausible to happen.
Yes, but I'm going to be offering my services to just go in there and be that guy who sits there and goes, but why? No, but why? No, but why? And make you justify your decisions. And
this is how we get promoted to engineering manager.
Yes, or the world's first simplicity consultant.
Simplicity consultant or complexity master.
Yes,
Simplicity master.
Or complexity
fighter,
defender. Yeah, something.
Yeah,
something like that.
We need to work on the title.
I will come up with a really cool job title.
We need to work on the title before you get out there.
Yeah.
Mark, it was a pleasure, as usual.
Thank you.
It was great. You folks, keep it simple.
Yes.
Keep it simple.
Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, please.
Yeah.
Please.
You really should. With that, stay tuned for more episodes of the Build Promotion Lab at DevOps Belgium 2024. We have about half a day more of awesome stuff. I already see my next interview coming up. Stay tuned.